just want to first introduce myself. My name is Angie Fiesel. I am the Director of Changemaker Campus at Ashoka U. I'm joined here by colleagues Marina Kim, Executive Director of Ashoka U, and also Charmaine Lynn, the Director of Changemaker Education at Ashoka Canada. And you just actually saw Diana Wells joining us as well, President Emeritus from Ashoka, and also a former board trustee at Brown University. So I wanted to start with just a very brief policy statement that I'll read before we get started. And that is that Ashoka is hosting this event and will be recording it. We may use clips, images, recordings, quotes, and other parts of the recording in Ashoka publications and share via social media. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your camera and ask questions via the chat window. If you have any other concerns, please type your question directly to my colleague Marina via the chat function. From a technology perspective, just as we're all learning the kinks here, you're invited, if you'd like to open your video, you're invited to show up by video. That's up to you. And you're welcome to rename yourself however you like. If you're not familiar with how to do so, you can just hover over the thumbnail with your image or the black box with your name. The top right has 3 buttons that you can hit, and then there's an option for renaming. We will use the chat function from time to time, so you're welcome to use that. If you've got a quick technology question, you can ping anyone with an Ashoka U label, and we'll be happy to try to help with that. As we kind of enter this time in this space, I just want to kind of reiterate some of the values that you heard in the first session for the SLE, but then also reiterated it on the Exchange platform, which is, you know, we want to be very intentional about the space that we create together and build a sense of community where people feel safe and included. And so we invite you to really just appreciate the diversity of perspectives that are joining the call from around the world, different institutional types, roles, and identities, and also just different experiences of our current situation. So if you would, especially as we move to breakout rooms and we start to share our own stories, just please do help us to live those values with deep empathy as we listen and respect one another's perspectives, experiences, which may be very unique from our own. I am really excited to introduce and to kick off this next panel. I think, you know, we have entitled this Our Changemaker Stories, and really amidst the crisis that we find ourselves in, we know that we're making sense of a shifting landscape. And sometimes it's really important to kind of get regrounded in our own purpose and regrounded in our own story. What has fueled us in the past, and hopefully to be a light and a source of energy as we face still turbulent times ahead. The folks that we've gathered are phenomenal, and I'm just going to turn it over very briefly with gratitude to our moderator, which is Dana Mortensen, who is an Ashoka Fellow, and she's CEO of World Savvy. World Savvy is a national education nonprofit that's reimagining K-12 education for a more globally connected world. So to lead us through the panel discussion, I'll turn it over to Dana, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Angie, and it's wonderful to be with you all today. And I'm equally excited about this panel and just to be in community with you all in this new normal of building community. I'd love to begin with a land acknowledgement. I'm based in the Minneapolis area, and I want to recognize and share gratitude for the links we share with the Mdewakanton Sioux communities. And we acknowledge that the land on which we stand, the ancestral land of Indigenous peoples. So I wanted to begin with that. One of the reasons this panel is so close to my heart and so critical is just so much of the work that I do at World Savvy and that we've done for almost 2 decades now is really rooted in storytelling and how much it shapes our communities and our own experiences as leaders. And we work with young people where we feel that's particularly critical. This is both our belief that in order to really lean into change making and be a change maker, we have to first understand ourselves, our own stories, cultures, communities, before we can interact with and try and think about broader scale change. And that it's also the way that we build trust and openness to hearing opinions and other things that are different from us through the process of engaging with one another's stories. And so I'm thrilled and excited to be here to share this with you and to hear from students at various points. We intentionally really looked to students who had were at various points in their educational journey to talk a little bit about their own stories and how that's shaped their identities as change makers. So it's really a privilege to be able to moderate this. So I'd like to begin by just introducing Jaden, if you can just give us a wave, from the University of San Diego, who is currently a sophomore. Sophia is joining us from the University of St. Thomas and is a graduating senior, so is in her last very modified semester there. And Yanis, who graduated a few years ago from Universidad de Monterrey, and she is actually now on staff there. And so we're really delighted to have these three remarkable change makers with us, and want to dive right in to get them thinking about some of the questions that have driven their own stories. So Jaden, I'll start with you. And just invite you to share a little bit more about what some of your earliest influences and experiences were that got you to care about social issues and injustice, and what was the moment that you first recognized yourself as a change maker, and where are you looking to take that in your future?
Yeah, so I'm a sophomore at the University of San Diego, and my change maker kind of story, I guess, started a little late in the game. So I'm a sophomore now. And back when I was a junior in high school, so just about 4 years ago, my main kind of end-all goal was to be a pizza delivery man. So I actually thought that I could do that for the rest of my my gas was covered. I thought that I could make enough money from tips to, live in a small apartment with some friends and roommates and stuff. And that was kind of where my mind, and that was good enough for me. But I'll never forget it. There was one day I was sitting in class, and a student came in with a yellow sheet of paper, and they said, "Jaden, I have a summons sheet for you to go to the principal's office." And I was like, "Oh man, what did I do this time?" So I was very confused. I had no idea what I did, but I went to the principal's office. And when I got there, I sat down, and he looked just as confused as I was, actually. He handed me a sheet of paper and said, "You're going to Idlewild." And for those of you that don't know, Idlewild is a small town in the mountains of California. It's pretty far away from me. I've never been there, and so I was really confused. I took this piece of paper, and I said, "Idlewild, what?" And I looked at it, and there were just instructions for me to get on a bus in a Walmart parking lot at 7:30 in the morning this coming Friday. And so that seems pretty ominous to me. I didn't really know what to make of that. And I asked him what this was. He had no idea. He just received this letter in his mailbox with my name on it, so brought me to the office to give it to me. I had no idea what to do, so I went home and I talked to my parents about it, and we had no idea what was going on. So we looked it up. There was a stamp at the top that said Rilo. I had no idea what Rilo was. We looked it up in Google, and we didn't get a whole lot of information. But I looked at it, 7:30 in the morning on Friday, that's when class would start. So at the least I get a long weekend, and I felt like that was, so that Friday morning, my dad got me off at the Walmart parking lot, and there was a huge charter bus. When I stepped in that charter bus, I think maybe I'm really supposed to be here. And the reason I thought that was because I went and I sat down next to a boy that looked just like me, in my same grade, my same age. And I asked him what this whole thing was, like what was happening, and a little confused about it. But he just answered and started talking about a little bit about himself, what he does. And he told me that he actually 3D prints prosthetic arms and legs and out to people in third world countries that are missing limbs and can't afford to replace them. And I thought to myself, wow, you're a junior in high school doing the same thing as you, a pizza delivery. Like, where's the gap right here? What just happened? And he wasn't the only one. Everybody else on that bus was the same. They were all doing crazy, amazing things, volunteering in their communities, and just super compassionate about helping people and all these different things. And I thought to myself, what's happening here? And so we finally arrived in Idlewild. There were about 4 or 5 other buses, a total of 200 students. And I later learned that RILA stands for Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. And so I was at a youth leadership conference for students around the state of California, all juniors. in high school that are doing amazing things in the community. And I had thought to myself, why am I here? But I was so grateful to be there, because out of the 200 people there, 199 of them had applied to be there, written essays, had an interview, and I did none of that. I was just given a piece of paper, told to get on a bus one morning, and that's what I did. But the entire time I was at Riley, I was grateful for every moment. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had. Everybody there, the community aspect was so amazing. You could walk by somebody on the street, give them a high five, say, hey, have a great day. And they'd be like, hey, you too. You want to go on a hike later? And then we'd go on a hike later, and you're best friends. And it was the coolest thing. And the entire time, the whole point that they stressed was the power of you. And that never really clicked with me until then. And it seems like it clicked with everybody else there, because they were all doing amazing things in their community. They were all volunteering, compassionate. And the power of you never really clicked with me, because I just wanted to be a pizza delivery man. But it wasn't until that point where I realized I can really do whatever it is I kind of want to do. You know, I can spread this idea that every amazing thing that happens out in the world starts as an idea in the head of one person, and you can just create that into a reality. And so that's what I do at the University of San Diego, is I try and help other students realize that this small idea in their head that seems like nothing right now can be amazing, and try and with that and work through that idea and create it and turn it into reality. And so that one moment, when I got that summons sheet in my junior year of high school, kind of led me down this road, and that's how it started.
Jaden, thank you. It's, you know, incidentally sounds a lot like the community and the stories that came from that first community was such a pivot point for you, which I think is really poignant for what we're talking about here today. Tell us a little bit with the minute we have left about University of San Diego is a Changemaker campus. It's where you landed. How did you select it? Why did you select it? And how have you used it to accelerate this journey?
Yeah, so I actually chose the University of San Diego because it's a Changemaker campus. At the time when I was going through college, I had no idea what that meant. It just kind of resonated with me. All throughout high school, after that Riley incident, I have been super involved with volunteering and community and things like that. And so Changemaker really just stood out to me. And it was my second week on campus where I found the Changemaker Hub. And since I found the Changemaker Hub, I haven't really left. And so I've just been kind of working in there. I'm the Changemaker Student Committee Coordinator. So I run committee meetings, kind of teach about different social justice issues to various students that are eager to learn and create different ideas, kind of come up with things to combat social justice issues. And I help them to work through those projects. So my position is very project oriented. A lot of students come to me with ideas, and I try and help them to work through those ideas.
That's great. Thank you, Jaden. Sophia, we would love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about the early parts of your own journey, when you realized sort of your connection to social justice issues and injustice, and also when you kind of you started to self-identify as a change maker, and a little bit more about how that journey has helped you pivot and where you want to take it.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. Hey, everyone. I'm Sophia Leyva. Like Dana said, I'm a senior at the University of St. Thomas. I'm majoring in justice and peace studies with a minor in nonprofit management. And I'm really excited to, I guess, like graduate in this new weird spring semester. But my change-making journey, I think, has sort of been transforming and like coming into fruition since I was like a little kid. My mom, she's like one of the first people that comes to mind when I think about this. That's like sounds very cliche, but like she was always an ardent like feminist. She would tell me stories about how she like went to this all women's college in California, and like when the president of her college said, well, maybe we should allow men into this university, and like her and all the students stood up and physically turned their backs to the president, and they were saying, no, like this is an all women's college for a reason. We want to keep this community the way that it is, and very like strongly held to those ideals. And I think it was like those little things interwoven in my life. And I also I grew up in a multiracial household, And I was open enrolled in schools throughout my life that are like predominantly white schools. And I grew up in East St. Paul. And so if you don't know, East St. Paul is not a predominantly white area. So my neighbors are people that like look like my family. And that's like what I'm used to being around. And so I started going to, you know, schools in predominantly white areas with kids who were different class backgrounds than I was. And I started to like hear and listen to things that I realized that like my family and my family experiences are much different than the kids that I was seeing around me. And I didn't really have words yet to put to that. Or my mom would tell me stories about, you know, reasons why maybe like my dad wouldn't get a job because of like his name, or little things that I didn't understand at the time, like complexities around like nuances around racism or classism or white supremacy. I didn't know like systemic injustice or like systemic racism. I didn't know that was a thing. I would just notice that like my family was a little bit different than kids around me, but I'm white, and so I could like fit in, and I would like hear all these conversations that I don't think otherwise I would have been privy to. And so that was sort of happening. And the summer after my senior year of high school was really around like this rise of the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. And there was the shooting of Philando Castile in Minnesota. And there were a lot of protests going around in front of the governor's mansion in St. Paul. And I started to go. There was like an occupation happening, and I felt a very strong sense of, I know Nick mentioned it in the keynote, this like yearning in your heart that you feel that says, I need to do something, or like I need to make change. And I realized that this was a movement that like I think I had a part in. And so I like started going with a friend of mine in high school, and I would just like go and listen to speakers and like talk to folks. And it was really like a community that I had never experienced before. And I couldn't understand why like my parents or my family members who are experiencing injustices like these would tell me like, don't go, like you can't do anything about that system. It's just how it is. Like you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting your friends in danger. And so that was really when I like started to think that this is a path that I could take into my future. When I was thinking about college, I thought I wanted to major in like musical theater. And I went and I like toured Boston Conservatory and like these different places when I was a sophomore in high school, thinking that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I realized that that was so much for me, and that I wanted my life to include other people in it, and I wanted my impact to be beyond myself. And so that's kind of how I ended up where I am. And I don't really think I see my changemaker identity as individual. I see myself as part of a collective movement. And I don't really know exactly what my place is within that movement yet. I think it's going to be constantly changing. But I'm really looking forward to figuring that out as I go, and graduating and sort of figuring out what my next step is.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Tell us a little bit in the last, minute or two for this set of questions around why St. Thomas? How did your journey lead you there, and what was it about that campus that led you there? And also what, since you've been on campus, has accelerated all of these sort of aspirations in you with respect to change making?
Yeah, so a big thing that drew me to St. Thomas is I met with a professor. He was head of the Justice and Peace Department at the time. He's now retired. Before I committed, and I was really inspired by his story and the things he had to say. And in that meeting, it really was just a lot of storytelling. And the University of St. Thomas is a Catholic institution. I was not raised Christian or Catholic, and so I was sort of nervous about if this was the right fit for me. And I really, really appreciated his honesty around how he felt, how he was able to sort of challenge the university and push back against maybe more conservative ideals that weren't inclusive, that didn't really stick to our social justice Catholic mission. And he was very open about that. He was very involved in campus organizing And that was really inspiring to me. I realized that this was a place where I was allowed to explore that. And he had a very global perspective as well. And that was something that I needed from wherever I was going to be studying. And so early in my campus years, I got into some like campus organizing, especially around like sexual assault and university responses around that. That was very personal and really powerful for me. And the university sort of helped push me into where I'm working now, which is Headwaters Foundation for Justice, based in South Minneapolis, where we make grants to organizations in Minnesota that are doing systemic change and organizations that are led by and for Black communities, Indigenous communities, and people of color. And the university has really sort of pushed what I've been doing there and like the growth that I've made through working at this foundation, and has really like given me a platform to talk more about what it is that I've been doing and share that with other students.
It's amazing. Thank you, Sophia. Yanis, it's wonderful to have you with us too, and would love to hear the same from you. Share with us a little bit more about your own journey, the moments when you sort of things clicked for you around social justice and injustice, and how you began to sort of identify as a change maker, and a little bit more about your path, because you're now graduated and sort of out in the world about what that trajectory looks like for you.
Perfect, thank you. First of all, hola a quienes estén aquí que hablen español. I'm from Mexico, and well, it's been interesting, my pathway, because I'm a graduate. I know I'm still feeling like a student, but well, I'm a graduate already. But there are five points in these like 10 years that I was a student and then now working at them. The first thing is that I recognize during my college time, like all the problems that I have during my basic education. So the first thing was like making consciousness of what I live back then, like the injustices that I have been living on that years. Well, kind of my story, my parents divorced when I was 14 years old. So that is part of my background, and I will talk about that in just minutes. But well, that issue helped me to introduce myself on social services since then. So I went to religious mission. I was like working for kids, and I do a lot of stuff on social services. So kind of that helped me to like forget what I was living in home and just introduce myself on helping others, no? So it was kind of this messy, like didn't want to work on me, but work on others. And then on college, I discovered that I needed to work on me in order to work with others, right? So when I introduce myself on these social services, I see that I have the power of leadership, because back then I didn't think I was a leader because the bully I live, a lot of things that people say to people that have divorced parents and all this bad stuff, right? And then on college, we were living a very heavy background. Here in Mexico, as probably many of you know, we live very difficult times of like gangs, a lot of deaths, a lot of drug trafficking. Well, we're still living that, but back then in 2009 to 2012, I was studying college, so we couldn't go out. Right now it's a different war, but back then if you go out, you were killed. Now if you go out, you are dead of the coronavirus. But the thing is that background also made me think about what I wanted to be living right in the moment. So we at UDEM, we need to do 480 hours of social service, and I was doing social service on a very vulnerable community here in urban area, and 2 of the kids that we were working were killed because of a gang. So it was pretty like knowing you were working with them and not having them in classroom the next week. So that makes me to make you realize that things were bad and we needed to do something. So I decided to start with friends, like with a group of friends, because I also noticed that I didn't have like everything, like all the skills to do it. So I work with 5 or 6 students of design. I'm an industrial designer. So we start this social initiative, and that's what makes me now being to them, because all the experience starting like a social innovation project, and that, and like putting in practice all the skills and having mentors. One super important thing is to have a mentor. I have a mentor that helped me like construct the idea and have like the structure. And the thing that made me more like accelerated was to be at the Ashoka U exchange back then, because I was on the Ashoka U 2013, then go back in the 2014, and then going back to the 2015. That makes me a lot of sense to that I'm doing a good thing, right? I'm in the track. There's people hearing, there's people letting me to do the thing. So yeah, that's kind of the pathway that I have been, or journey that I have been through.
Yanis, that's amazing. I love the idea that before we work on others, we have to work on ourselves, and this idea of introspection as a key ingredient to change making. I think that's really beautiful. So tell us a little bit more. You're out of college now, but on that journey, how did the campus environment actually accelerate that for you? What was it about, the campus you were on that helped sort of move you along on that journey?
I think is that we were learning at the same time, because then on that times we weren't an Ashoka campus. We didn't have the designation. So we were learning at the same time, because they were in the track and I was in the track. Firstly, we were in separate because I was like doing my stuff and them doing their stuff. And when we found together that I was doing something and they like invite me to join the track, that accelerate my journey. That having people to hear me, having people to let students be on that track, I think it was the most amazing thing that has accelerated me as a change maker. And having the story or the history now as a faculty, like accelerate other ideas of other students. So being part of the journey, I think, was the most amazing thing I could live, and I'm super thankful for them to be like open. I think that's the thing. They were open to hear me. They were open to invite me. And another thing is that they like try to help in every part of the journey. Like if it was with mentors, if it was like with the workshops, if like with everything. I think I made the first like Ashoka panel over there, and they were like, yes, we will help you. Like that was super great, because they give me the opportunity to obviously like to try, and also to fail, because I did fail in that time. And I was kind of scary, because if you fail in front of your seniors and in front of the directors, that could be something for a student not a good like experience. But they didn't get mad, so they were like more like, yeah, continue doing, and no, it doesn't matter if you fail. And that also made me work my skills. I think that's the most important thing. I actually have a little story. Like one of my directors, design director, he was the first one to say me no when I wanted to do something. He wasn't like thinking about what was a change maker. He didn't have an idea. Like I say, we were like in the same track trying to understand what was everything about it, but he hasn't been involved in that. So when I go and said him like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna try to work a social initiative, he was like, no. And now this year I have the opportunity to give a class with him. And I told him that thanks for his no, it makes me go higher. Like he was like my trampoline to saying me no. So in order to go bigger, because I was like, okay, you won't hear me, let me go to the other faculty, because I was in the design area. So I go to the one of business, and well, there was Carlos Basurto, and he was like, yes, come in. Like, I don't know from who you are and why are you here? But he was the one who opened me the door. And yeah, now giving class with him and doing like the social innovation track with him in his classes, like now you understand me. Now you know what I was trying to do that year. And he was like, I don't remember that. I don't know like when I say it, but thanks for telling me, like thanks for sharing this with me, because now I will be super careful the next time a student comes with me and I say no or yes before hearing them. So yeah.
That's amazing. There's so much richness in all the commentary that you're sharing. This idea that I think this is true in my experience of Ashoka, that both having these experiences that make you think about justice and injustice and what your place in that is, but then also an invitation to even call yourself a change maker or think about yourself through that lens of identity. It seems like a really important fixture in different ways for each of you, which is really phenomenal. I'm gonna kind of roll backwards through now, kind of thinking based on your own stories. We're in community here with a whole lot of folks who have hold different positions within the university infrastructure and ecosystem, and they're all interested in how to build these cultures of change making, right? And so what advice or kind of recommendations or things might you have to share for them about how you can build and sustain that on campuses? And there was also a request in the comments about, you know, for those of you who are now still in school, Sophia and Jaden, trying to navigate this, you know, changemaker identity and change making in this completely altered reality, right? What's that been like for you? And also what advice might you have around that to the extent this isn't over? So Yanis, why don't we start with you? What's your advice and counsel for this group?
Well, the first thing is to be open, because if you are not open to hear what students want to tell, it could happen both stories, that the one that my director told me no and I go higher. But if that no will stop them, that could be something that you are missing, like talent and skills from them to be developed. So that the first thing is to open the door and hear them. The other thing is that having mentorship programs that helps a lot to students to be on the track, because that helps their failure go like lower, but also they feel accompanied in this crazy world, because sometimes you don't know if you're going on the track or if you get lost on some topics that you are not studying. Because in my case, I studying design and I didn't know about anything of business. So having a mentor helped me like to be structured. And the other thing, to validate the skills that you are trying to implement in the change maker. So those are my 3 tips. More than saying you what to do, is like that are the things that I experienced myself, but also that I'm working on my university with other students.
Thank you, Yanis. Sophia, can you share some counsel for this group and advice?
Yeah, I definitely have some advice. I think that first I really want to like challenge everyone to like be open and curious about what does institutional change look like within your universities or your organization, wherever you are. I think that we've been so conditioned to think that, well, these systems are so huge, but unless we really create a collective vision for how we can change those systems, like we can actually get there. I think we're just taught that we can't. Second, I would challenge everyone to like reflect on your own internalized racism and colonialism. And I don't want that to sound harsh. I'm just saying that because I think that to reflect on that and to really challenge these beliefs that we have internalized without even realizing it can really get in the way of serving students. And I've seen that happen within my own university. And I know that intentions are always like at their best. And sometimes our senior leaders need to do some own work on themselves. Like Yanis was saying, you need to work on yourself before you can serve your students. And third, I would say like, please just show up more. We actually love seeing like executive and administrators at events and on campus and show up and talk to students and ask questions. Because I wish that I had more courage to say these things when I was younger, and that I knew that I had the power to really push administration in my university when I was younger. And it really wasn't until late in my career as a student that I realized I could harness that. So that's my advice.
Sage wisdom. Thank you, Sophia. And Jaden, how about you? Can you share some bits of wisdom before we conclude this part of our talk and get everyone else chatting?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Eunice and Sophia said already. I would also just like to add in inspiration. I think like the amount of students that are involved with your changemakers on your campuses already make up a small fraction of the students that are in your entire campus. And there are hundreds of, not thousands of students out there that can also be changemakers, right? Like Sophia said, like the changemaker identity is ever changing. And so all it takes is one for a student to realize, hey, I want difference and I want to do this. So I think just inspiration, keep going with that track of trying to get new students to come in and be a part of this bigger thing, so something that can actually make a difference in the world. And then on top of that, I would like to add education, and actual education on the change that they're trying to address. The Dunning-Kruger effect is only real, right? Like the problems that are easiest to solve the least about. So if everyone kind of has a great idea of what they're trying to address, and they're never going to have every answer, but if they can at least have a little bit more of an education on the issue they're trying to address, then it makes it that better. So, yeah.
Jaden, Sophia, Yanis, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your stories and about your own sort of change-making journeys. Been so helpful and really critical, I think, for us to springboard from and think about, you know, how we can all now be in conversation with that. So just everyone, please join me in thanking Yanis, Sophia, and Jaden. So appreciative. And now that we've heard from students on the panel, we're actually going to break everyone up into groups of 3 into some breakout rooms. And we are going to have 6 minutes to just respond to a prompt with one another to start to get these storytelling juices flowing in smaller groups. We want to invite you to start with short introductions before diving in. And we're going to trust you to self-manage the time allocation. We'll give you about a 60-second warning before pulling you back into the larger room. And then when we invite you back, we're going to have one person, or we'll invite 1 or 2 people to share a key theme or takeaway as a final debrief in the chat function. So when you get into these breakout rooms, we'll ask you to just sort of your name, introduce yourself with your name, your institution, your role, and how long you've been there. And then just sort of answer the prompt as you reflect on your own story. What propelled or shaped your path in higher ed or into higher ed, and what vision for impact really guides your work? And so if we can keep that to, you know, 6 minutes or less per person, hopefully we can get through that. And again, Yanis, Sophia, and Jaden, thank you so much for sharing.
Incredible.
And we'll see you all in the breakout rooms and after. Just want to thank everybody who's returning. If you've got some insights, I know from the session that I sat in on, we didn't follow the rules, because who does? We're in a change-making conference, and talked a lot about what we thought would really help to move the needle of hearing these student stories and things that came out, or how you create a common experience that, so every student, not just a siloed few who get to have some experience, understand that this is embedded into the fabric of what it means at the institution. So some great ideas flowing. And if there's other things you can share in the chat function that came from the conversation, since we're really close to time on this. And Brent, I'll give deference to Brent's great comment about, you know, we sort of got a cheat sheet from our students today about what we need to be thinking about when we're trying to cultivate these kinds of campuses. You know, be open, show up, create invitations for people to identify as change makers, and then look to clear barriers and provide these relevant, rich experiences that obviously did so much for their own journeys. So feel free to share in the chat function. I know, Angie, you've got some sort of a quick poll, right, coming through.
You got it. I've just administered the poll, so we would love to invite you to share, again, any closing comments in the chat function, or if you want to respond to this poll, we would love your feedback. Dana, thank you so much for a beautiful moderation and really just drawing out the great stories.
Thank you all so much.